On the 6th of December 2025, a trail camera on private land in Ontonagon County in Michigan's Upper Peninsula recorded a photograph its owner had not gone looking for. The camera had been set for deer. What it captured instead was an adult cougar, moving along a snow-dusted trail in the last gray light of the afternoon. That alone would have been rare enough to report. But the animal was not alone. Spaced out behind it, following the same line through the snow, walked two cubs, nearly a year old, trailing their mother north through country where, by more than a century of official record, there was no such thing as a resident mountain lion at all. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources took the image, enhanced it, and confirmed what it showed. 3 cougars. A mother and 2 young. The first verified evidence of mountain lions breeding anywhere in the state in over 100 years, and by everything the science said, it should not have been possible. To understand why, you have to start with the silence. Mountain lions were native to Michigan once. They ranged across both peninsulas, the same tawny, long-tailed cat that goes by cougar, puma, panther, catamount, one animal wearing half a dozen names. And then, as happened almost everywhere east of the Rocky Mountains, they were erased, shot, trapped, and poisoned out of the landscape by settlers who feared them for their livestock and their children. The last wild cougar known to be killed in Michigan was taken near Newberry in the eastern Upper Peninsula in 1906. After that, nothing. For roughly 100 years, Michigan had no confirmed cougars at all. There were stories, of course. There are always stories. A shape at the tree line. A track pressed into the mud of a 2-track road. A scream in the dark that people swore was no bobcat. Wildlife agencies filed them where they file such things, under unconfirmed, alongside the lake monsters and the panthers that were always, on inspection, something else. That skepticism was earned. For 100 years, nearly every reported mountain lion in the eastern woods turned out on a closer look to be a large house cat, a dog, a bobcat, or a trick of scale and shadow. Whole regions kept the cougar alive as a mascot and a legend long after the animal itself was gone. The ghost cat, the thing someone's uncle swore he saw on a back road at dusk. So when the Department of Natural Resources built a system to sort the real from the imagined, it built it around proof. Reports come in through a public program the department calls Eyes in the Field, and a dedicated cougar team reviews each one, discarding everything that cannot be confirmed by a clear photograph, a video, a track, a carcass, or DNA. The count that began to climb after 2008 is not a count of what people believed they saw. It is a count of what could not be explained away. The disappearance was so complete that in 2018 the federal government made it official. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service removed the eastern cougar from the endangered species list, not because it had recovered, but because it was gone. Declared extinct. The last confirmed wild cougar anywhere in the eastern United States outside of Florida had been killed near the Maine to Quebec border in 1938. The eastern mountain lion, the government concluded, no longer existed and had not for generations. And that ruling was barely 7 years old when a trail camera in the Upper Peninsula photographed a mother leading 2 cubs through the snow. Because the silence had already broken quietly a decade earlier. In 2008, the DNR confirmed a set of cougar paw prints in the Upper Peninsula, and then 2 more sightings that same year, each one verified by tracks. It was the first hard evidence in a century, and from that point, the number began slowly to climb. 20 confirmed observations in 2024. Then, in 2025, 31, the most the state had recorded since the animal was wiped out in the early 1900s. By the first half of 2026, the DNR had already confirmed 13 more, all of them in the Upper Peninsula. In 18 years, only a single confirmed sighting has ever surfaced in the Lower Peninsula, hundreds of miles to the south, one cat, in Clinton County in 2017. If you have ever seen something in the woods you couldn't account for, a track too wide, a shape too long, a set of eyes carried too high off the ground, Tell me where you were watching from in the comments. People send these in, and the map they draw is stranger than you would think. And if this is the kind of thing that stays with you, consider subscribing, because this story is not over. It may not be over for years. Here is the explanation the science offered, and for more than a decade, it held. The cougars turning up in Michigan were not the ghosts of a hidden local population that had somehow survived unseen in the pines. They were travelers. Young males dispersing out of the nearest breeding population in the American West, the Black Hills of South Dakota, and the rough country around them, roughly 900 miles from the Upper Peninsula in a straight line, and a great deal farther on foot. This is not a guess. It is written into the animal itself. When a young male cougar reaches independence, he cannot stay where he was born. The older resident males will not tolerate a rival, so he leaves, walking, sometimes for months, covering a few miles most nights, in search of unclaimed ground and a mate. There is no limit built into that instinct. A male will keep moving as long as the territory ahead of him is empty, and the females have not appeared. And in a landscape swept clean of his own kind, that can mean walking until he reaches the sea. The proof arrived spectacularly in 2011. In June of that year, a young male cougar was struck and killed by an SUV on a parkway in Milford, Connecticut, the first confirmed cougar in that state in more than a century. Biologists took its DNA and traced it home. The animal had come from the Black Hills of South Dakota. It had traveled more than 1,500 miles in a straight line, and likely closer to 2,000 along its actual route, over roughly 2 years, the longest dispersal ever documented for the species and one of the longest overland journeys ever recorded for any land mammal in North America. Isotope tests and a physical inspection found no sign it had ever been held in a cage. It was wild, and it had walked from the Dakotas to the Atlantic coast, and its route did not have to be guessed at. As it moved east, the animal left a trail of itself. DNA recovered from hair and droppings at 5 separate points across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and New York, and photographs from citizen trail cameras strung along the way. One of those cameras stood in Michigan. Before it ever reached New England, the Connecticut cougar had walked through the Upper Peninsula. So, a male cougar in the Upper Peninsula was extraordinary, but it was explainable. The animals were passing through. Lone young males walking a long, thin corridor east, most of them never staying, most of them never seen by a single human being. The confirmed sightings were not a settlement. They were footprints, the scattered evidence of a migration that began 900 miles away and, for the most part, kept going. That was the answer. And if you have followed it this far, you already understand why it is worth watching. So if you haven't yet, this is the moment to subscribe, because the answer is about to stop working. Because a male cougar, however far he walks, cannot produce a cub by himself. Return to that trail camera in Ontonagon County. 2 cubs, nearly a year old, walking the snow behind an adult. Cubs are not the sign of a traveler passing through. Cubs are the sign of a female who had been in Michigan long enough to establish herself, to den, to give birth, and to raise 2 kittens through most of a year in the northern winter. The Department of Natural Resources stated it without hedging. For the first time in over a century, mountain lions had reproduced in the state. By the department's own account, it was the first documented cougar reproduction east of the Mississippi River in well over 100 years. The timeline made it harder to wave away. The 2 cubs had first been photographed back in March of 2025. When the December image surfaced 9 months later, they were visibly larger, still traveling with their mother, still alive through a full turn of seasons in the north, not a single fleeting frame, but a family that had held together across most of a year. And the wider numbers, read closely, pointed the same direction. Of the reports logged in 2025, a cluster came from 2 neighboring properties. The same territorial cat, crossing the same cameras again and again, the behavior not of an animal passing through, but of an animal that had chosen a place and settled into it. And this is where the clean explanation falls apart, because female cougars do not do what male cougars do. Where a young male walks until he finds territory, a young female tends to stay close to home. Biologists call it philopatry. Roughly half of all female cougars never disperse from their birth range at all, and those that do usually settle within a few miles of where they were born. The records make the gap almost absurd. The longest journey ever documented for a male cougar was that 1,500-mile line to Connecticut. The longest ever documented for a female was a fraction of it, a straight line distance of a few hundred miles, and even that was treated by researchers as astonishing. For years, that difference stood like a wall. As of a little over a decade ago, across all the DNA and all the camera evidence gathered along the eastern edge of the species' spread, only one female had ever been detected east of the Missouri River. Not one had ever been confirmed east of the Mississippi. The nearest established breeding females sat far out in central Nebraska, and the front line of those females had crept only about 150 miles east in a quarter of a century. That is how slowly a population of cougars actually moves, because it can move only as fast as its females, and its females barely move at all. The males could reach Michigan. Everyone agreed the females could not. And without a female, there could be no cubs, no den, no next generation. A migration of lone males is a biological dead end, a line of footprints that leaves nothing behind it. And then, in the snow of Ontonagon County, there were cubs. So how did a female get there? No one can say for certain. What remains are possibilities, and not one of them is comfortable. The first is that a female simply did it. That somewhere to the west, a young female broke from everything her biology predicts and walked the same 900-mile gauntlet. The males walk across interstates and rivers and open farmland and lived. If that is true, it is one of the most remarkable journeys the animal has ever made, precisely because females almost never make it. And the route is lethal. Researchers have described the Midwest as a kind of graveyard for dispersing cougars, a place where, for decades, almost no cat that turned up was older than 3 years old because they are hit by cars or shot, or they simply disappear before they can ever settle down. The second possibility is quieter, and in some ways, stranger. It is that the cougars have been in the Upper Peninsula longer than the record admits, that the sightings curve, climbing since 2008, is not only tracking the arrival of cats, but the arrival of cameras. The DNR now runs more than 1,000 trail cameras across the Upper Peninsula, set out mainly to count wolves, and there are millions of images still waiting to be reviewed by hand. It is possible the animals had been quietly present, even reproducing, below the threshold of anyone's ability to notice that what looks like an arrival is really a discovery, a population that was always thinly there, finally being seen. And Michigan was not the only place it was happening. In the same handful of years, biologists documented cougar reproduction in northern Minnesota as well. By some accounts, the first cats born in either region in a century. 2 quiet firsts surfacing at nearly the same moment on opposite shores of Lake Superior. Whatever was underway, it did not look like one stray animal that had lost its way. It looked more like a front. The third possibility is the oldest and the most quickly dismissed, that these are not wild western cougars at all, but escaped or released captives, the explanation people have reached for with eastern mountain lions for generations. But the physical evidence keeps pointing the other way. The Connecticut cat carried no mark of captivity. When a cougar was struck by a car in the Upper Peninsula, the DNR recovered its body and its DNA. Sample by sample, the results keep coming back the same: wild and western. Somewhere in the department's freezers and hard drives, part of the answer may already exist. The DNA pulled from the cougar killed on the road. The samples that would come eventually from the mother or her cubs, if they are ever recovered. In principle, that genetic material could one day say where she came from, whether she carries the Black Hills signature of the wandering males or something else. something no one has yet accounted for. For now, it is unread. The cub's origin sits in the same place as the cubs themselves, out in the country somewhere, unrecovered, waiting. What the department will tell you plainly is what it does not know. It does not know how many cougars are in Michigan. There is no population estimate, and its biologists are careful not to invent one. It does not know whether the animals are settling in or only passing through, though it suspects now that at least one family is not passing through at all. It does not know where the mother and her 2 cubs are today. They were photographed in December. And after that, through the turn of the year, nothing. No confirmed sighting, the family gone back into the same country that had hidden it in the first place. For what it is worth, the people who study these cats are not asking anyone to be afraid. A cougar attack in the Upper Peninsula is a vanishingly remote thing. The Department of Natural Resources' own specialists point out dryly that the drive to work on a winter morning is far more dangerous than the animal in the trees. The mountain lion is not a threat stalking the edge of town. It is something rarer and harder to hold on to, a predator the state spent a century erasing, returning on its own, on 4 feet, across 900 miles, without permission, and without anyone quite understanding how. There is a reason biologists watch this so closely, beyond the strangeness of it. An apex predator does not simply occupy a landscape, it reshapes one. In the parts of the country where cougars are common, they hold deer numbers in check, and the effects run all the way down to the pavement. One study modeling the return of cougars to the eastern United States estimated that over 3 decades, restored predators could thin deer herds enough to cut deer vehicle collisions by more than 1/5, preventing, in the researchers' projection, more than 150 human deaths and billions of dollars in damage across the region. The animal the state spent a century erasing is, by that arithmetic, something the state might now have quiet reason to want back, which turns the mystery of the female in the snow from a curiosity into a question with weight. Is she a fluke, one impossible animal that beat the odds and will leave no lasting mark? Or is she the leading edge of a return that no one planned, no one released, and no one fully understands? It is protected now. The cougar sits on Michigan's endangered species list, which makes it illegal not only to kill one, but even to go searching for them, because a female under too much human pressure will abandon her cubs, and the thing everyone is trying to protect is the very thing the record says should not exist. So the search stays at a distance, 1,000 cameras in the trees, 6 million images no one has finished reading. A heat map of confirmed sightings that grows 1 dot at a time, all of them clustered in the far north, none of them ever quite adding up to an answer. What is known is that the forest is larger than the cameras watching it, that the snow keeps its own records and gives them up slowly, and only when it chooses to, that a young male can walk 2,000 miles and die on a road 1,000 miles from anywhere his kind is supposed to be, and that somewhere north of a line the animals were never meant to cross again. A female that the maps insist cannot be there is teaching 2 cubs right now how to move through a place without being seen. No one can explain how she arrived, and the only thing the record can say for certain is that she is already raising the ones who will come